Hey everybody, welcome to episode 39 of Into the Necrosphere. My guest today is going to be a young buck named Simon out of a band called Aversio Humanitatis. They are, in my opinion, probably the best thing to come up Spanish black metal's pike since basically forever. They put out their first record in 2011. I think that a lot of people really started to take notice of them in 2017 with an EP they put out called Longing for the Untold, which is where I first noticed them. But this new record that they have just released, Behold the Silent Dwellers, came out on the 17th of June. It was put out by Debimo Morty Productions, and it is absolutely fantastic. So if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely do yourself a favor and add it to your list of things to do immediately. But Simon and I had a fantastic conversation. He's a really, really great guy. We spoke about the band, the record, the Spanish scene, his studio, and a whole lot more besides. So that's going to be coming your way in just a few minutes. But first, my demo of the week. And today, the spotlight falls upon a one-man project out of Fayetteville in North Carolina. The band is called Nihilum. He has just put out an EP on Bandcamp called Call of the Void. And the best way to describe this would be, really well done, old school, melodic, atmospheric, but quite aggressive black metal. I had the recommendation made to me by a really cool Twitter page called Metal Detector, and I love this, so I thought I would share it with you. This is a track off of Call of the Void. It's called Pestilence.
Humanity, a flame, skies foretell the arrival of despair, directed by destruction, endless with a gift from hell. The leap of fertile soil leads cowardice to starvation. Droves of sickly orphans feast on each other. Devotion to his master drives chaos throughout the land. To the nether, they are banished by the bloodthirsty horny demands. A sliver of hope in their search for a glimpse of the overseer. Devilish biology, unmasked by the practice of witchcraft. Leaking U-boats breach the putrid gospel of death. Shadow covers the world. Obsidian malice unleashed on the masses. Sorcery, the conduit for endowment of contagion. Vermin legions deployed under sails of blissful ignorance. Amphibious assault moves forward, unfettered across the water. Willing mothers go unanswered as their children die before them. In anguish, enmity, on their journey to below. in their search for a glimpse of the great unnamed. Devilish biology, unmasked by the practice of witchcraft. Leaking pupils breach the putrid gospel of death. Shadow covers the world, obsidian malice unleashed. Victorious time for those, the servant of the void, ever closer to the age of complete annihilation.
Pestilence by Nihilum out of Lafayetteville in North Carolina. And I will post the link to Nihilum's Bandcamp page in the description of the video and of the podcast feed. And just a reminder once again that if you've just discovered the show and you're watching this on YouTube, and for some inexplicable reason you don't want to spend 2 hours gazing at my handsome features, you can also get the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and pretty much anywhere that hosts podcasts. Likewise, if you're in a band, you're unsigned, and you want me to hear your stuff, send me an email to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. You can also reach me on social media, and you can follow me on Twitter at iNecrosphere, or on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Into the Necrosphere and you should find me. And yeah, send me a DM. Send me a link of where to find your stuff, and if I like it, I will feature it on the show. And if I really like it, who knows? I might reach out to you and ask you to come on as a guest at some point in the near future. Speaking of guests, a reminder to everybody that next week is going to be the big one. So I spoke about it the week before, and I've mentioned it on social media. But I'm going to be talking to Alex from Ruins of Everast. A total wish list interview, and he is pretty much exactly as I imagined that he would be, and that's a very good thing. So that's going to be coming your way on episode 40. In the pipeline, I have also got a very cool interview with a tattoo artist from the UK named Mark Weatherhead. It was kind of a random conversation that was that got set up, and just really hit it off with him. I had a really, really fun time talking about the tattoo industry, talking about black metal, films, and comic books, fucking anything and everything under the sun. So that's going to be coming your way on episode 41, and then I've also got a few other folks that I'm busy talking to, and in the process of setting up conversations with. And I really just want to say thank you once again to everybody who took the time last week to send me messages to say how much they enjoyed the Master's Call episode. I've always been of the belief that one of the most valuable currencies that we have as human beings is time, because we don't have unlimited amounts of it. So when anybody takes the time to send me a message on Twitter, or drop me a line on Facebook, or whatever the case may be, to say that they've enjoyed what I've done, I really appreciate that. And I was having a conversation with brother Marco from Stellar Master Elite about this not too long ago, and we were talking about the size of the show and how many people listen, how many people watch. And the one thing that I said to him over the course of the conversation was, as it stands right now, we get about probably 150 to 200 views on YouTube per episode. And then there's about probably 1,500 to 2,000 downloads across all of the podcasts or podcast platforms that I host this on. But quite honestly, I would much rather do 10 interviews back to back with Marco, or record 10 episodes back to back with Marco, I should say, then have to put up with rock star bullshit and interview people that I don't, or speak to people that I don't like, because honestly, I kind of started this podcast to basically do whatever I want and talk about the music I like. And in some ways, I think it's kind of morphed into a bit of a bat signal to anybody out there who's a like-minded soul. And I'm really happy that most of the people that have, I would say actually not even most, all of the people that have reached out to me thus far, all seem to be of a very similar mindset. I think we all share very similar values around not only music but the way that we live our lives. And I would much rather retain that small audience than have to deal with a bunch of fucking edgelords and bros and woke fucking idiots and who knows what else. So I guess this is a long way of maybe sounding a little bit more mushy than I normally do, but I really appreciate people that listen to the show. I appreciate the audience, and I hope you guys really like. I hope you guys continue to listen, and I hope you can continue to enjoy what I put out. Speaking of which, I'm not going to do a review on today's show. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about an album that just turned 30. So on the day that I'm recording this, which is the 25th of June, or on this day 30 years ago, 30 score ago, Deicide put out their debut record. So I thought that I have spoken about it on the podcast to various guests, and I think anybody who's listened to a couple of episodes probably knows how much I love that album. But I thought I would broaden the conversation a little around it and share some thoughts on the album, but also talk a bit about how I discovered it and I guess what it meant in my life. So I thought it'd be fun to do that for a change, and so that'll be coming your way after my interview. And then I will also read some news and talk some trash. Maybe a little bit less news reading today and a bit more trash talking. I do want to talk about one thing, and I'll get to it during the news section, but that is the hate that The Last of Us 2 has been receiving, which I just cannot fucking understand. I got the game on Friday, or this past Friday. I've played about probably 12 or 13 hours so far, and I think it's fucking fantastic. I have no idea why people hate it so much. But I'll leave you to linger on that burning question. And in the meantime, let's welcome Simon from Aversio Humanitatis. So, Simon, thank you very much for joining the show. And I think if you've listened to any of the other episodes that I've done, I actually consciously try to go into these without any sort of preparation whatsoever, and run it like a conversation between either two people who are my buddies, already know each other, or people who have just met. And generally speaking, I'll always try and invite somebody that whose music I like, or who I'm particularly interested in getting to know or getting to know more about. So hence why I reached out to you. And from what you said to me, you don't really do a whole lot of interviews, and you don't do a lot of video interviews like this at all?
Like this, no. I have done a lot of written interviews, but it's the first time I do a video call.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. I had an incident not too long ago where Sakis from Rotting Christ, who I have actually interviewed in the past, just flat out refused. Like he said, if it's not on Skype, he's not doing it. So I appreciate you mastering Zoom and coming on and talking to me. The first thing I wanted to talk about is just the unbelievably, I guess, overwhelmingly positive response there's been to the tracks that you guys have released off of Behold the Silent Dwellers so far, because you've put out 2 songs, and three, sorry, and I don't think I've seen a single bad comment anywhere on any sort of social media, on YouTube or anything. I mean, people seem to be completely freaking out about it. How does that, firstly, how do you feel? Do you think, are you kind of like, yes, finally, motherfuckers, you're noticing us? Or is it has this really sort of surpassed your expectations?
Well, I mean, I'm happy with the response, but I'm not really sure if it's like a realistic picture of the whole thing, because at the end, I see comments of the people I already know, or in the Facebook groups I'm already in. So it's like, I don't know if these people are being nice just because they know me or whatever. So I can imagine that it's having a good response, but I'm not 100% sure about it. You know, just I just want to wait until the album is out and to see what really happens.
The first single you guys put out, I think, was "The Weaver of Tendons," if I'm not mistaken. Were you nervous before that got put out on YouTube and on? I think it went on YouTube and on the streaming services at around the same time, right?
Well, that was the second one. The first one was "The Wanderer of Abstract Paths," and nobody. It's like it had a low response. I don't know why. So the second one, the Weaver of Tendons, was like more people know about it, and yeah, it had better response. Although I thought it was like not the best song in the album, but I don't know, people liked it. And what was your question?
Well, I was wondering whether when you first put out songs off this new record, were you nervous about how people were going to perceive them? Obviously you've been doing this for quite a while, but I guess are those nerves still there? Are you still like, are they going to like it or they're not going to like it?
Yeah, of course. I'm not gonna say I don't give a shit. I mean, it's like I don't take every comment like really seriously and all that, but of course I'm nervous because you have put so much effort on it.
Yeah.
Like 1 or 2 years of all your free and all your free time on it, and you want to see like people like it. It's the truth.
Yeah. We'll talk a bit more about how this record was put together, because I know this was very time consuming and a tremendous amount of work went into this album. But I think for anybody that doesn't know the band, and I hate kind of asking standard interview questions, but I think it's relevant in this instance. Just talk to me a bit about how the band got started, how you guys formed, and just a bit about your background as far as, getting into music and particularly getting into black metal was concerned.
Well, this band started in 2010. It was initially a solo project of me. Mm-hmm. I did like four songs, but I didn't know how to play drums and how to sing. So I just told these guys that were my friends, like, hey man, can you do the vocal for this track and the drums? So that's how it started, like every other band in the world.
Yeah.
So after we did the first four tracks, it started to sound really good. So I said, okay, let's wait until I have another couple or 3 songs to make it already a full album. So we waited until there were another 2 songs, and we recorded those songs, and it was Abandonment Ritual album, or first album. That, it's officially an album, but to me, it's not really an album. It was like our first demo, maybe. So
it was very quick, I guess, from having started in 2010 to putting out the Abandonment Ritual in 2011. To kind of your first release was a full length record.
Yeah, but it's just because this wasn't my first band, so I really knew how things go. And first, like, really worked on these songs and prepare the full album before releasing small records, small demos or EPs or whatever, which is fine. I like it, but this time I wanted to do something bigger from the start.
Yeah.
I mean, as I told you, once I see that like it was taking shape and it sounded consistent, I decided to release a full album from the beginning.
So in some ways, would you say that this new record, Behold the Silent Dwellers, does this feel to you like this is the first proper Aversio Humanitatis album?
No, it really feels like the second one, and the first one being the previous EP,
Yeah,
Longing for the Untold, because that EP was meant to be an album, but at that time, the three of us were in different countries. I was in Spain, but the drummer was in Belgium, and the singer was in like Mexico, Canada, North America. So we didn't have the time to rehearse and make more songs. So we decided to just record those 4 songs that were in the P, that are in the P.
Yeah.
And one of those songs is a re-recording from one song from a split with Primigenium, which is a classic Spanish band,
Mm-hmm.
in where I was playing live at the moment. So I'm talking about the Verse Shifting Path, a song we released in 2014 or something like that.
Yeah.
And we re-recorded for Longing for the Untold. So really we had only 3 new songs for that EP, and we took that other song and re-recorded it. So yeah, we cheated a bit. So what we really wanted was to release a full album, but at the end it was just an EP.
Yeah.
But it feels like the first album to me.
Yeah. So, how old were you when this band got started? Because you mentioned it being your first band.
Can you repeat the question?
How old were you when the band got started?
I was like 20 or 21 maybe.
Yeah. And growing up, I ask this because I'm very interested in the Spanish scene, and I guess your influences growing up. But when you were younger, when you were in your teens, who were the Spanish bands that you looked up to, and that you kind of feel in some ways maybe cleared the path for you to be able to start your band? I guess who were sort of the local bands that you sort of looked up to when you were younger?
Well, I remember to listen a lot of Cry Female. I don't know how is it pronounced in English. We call it Cry Female here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good band for me. I haven't listened to it for a couple of years, but I remember listening to it a lot. Like I say, Primigenium, which is kind of famous. I mean, it was really famous back in the 90s. Right now, it isn't like too popular, but it's very well known. I remember listening to a lot of Corpus Christi, which is not Spanish, but Portuguese, but well, similar. And I don't know, maybe Balmog, another band called Serion, which is really underground, but it was really nice band to hear when I was younger. And I don't know, not many to be honest, because I think the Spanish scene has been growing a lot the last 5 years or 6 years. But back like 10 years ago, it wasn't that big, I think.
Yeah. And so the scene right now, you've got bands like yourselves. Who else stands out for you? Because, I guess it's so interesting for me to see these different countries and the scenes within them really starting to emerge. Like, Iceland, you see just one after the other fantastic band coming out. I mean, Poland scene is absolutely incredible. You can understand why the guys in those countries make black metal, because mostly the weather is terrible, and it's cold and it's miserable all the time. However, in Spain, the weather is great, the food's good, and the women are beautiful. So, what do you guys have to be angry about?
Well, I mean, I know it's like you're joking. There's always a reason to be angry, to be honest, or to be sad. But I don't know. There's always a reason to keep fighting. It sounds corny, but it's true.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just you can see it in different scenes in the world. Like you see in South America, many bands sound like more violent, and you can feel like the mood in different scenes.
Yeah.
So it's true that I think that Spanish scene didn't have or doesn't have maybe nowadays like a really recognizable sound or personality, but I think it's taking form and it's growing, you know. Of course, we all started listening mostly to foreign bands, but as the time passes, we develop our own sound and our own personality.
So who were the bands that you were listening to growing up? If we think beyond Spain, who were kind of your big influences? And I guess particularly for black metal, what was the bands that got you down the devil's path?
Well, I can be too original with this one, like Mutilation, Mayhem, like the classics.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer that one without like doing justice to everyone. But I will say some French bands like Mutilation is a big influence to me. Like you can't recognize any of it in Aversio Humanitatis, but
yeah,
it was a band that I really enjoyed at the time. And like some Mayhem, Darkthrone, the typical stuff.
Yeah. So what's the vibe like between bands in Spain? Is there camaraderie? Do the bands feel like we're in this together, or are they? Do you guys tend to sort of keep to yourself, I should say?
I don't think like there's like a bad blood between bands in general, but it isn't either like a community or something like that. I think that everyone is doing their thing. I talk with people like from MT, from Balmog, from Martyrium, from Cryphemal, from many bands, but not really. There's not really a scene. It's like everyone doing their thing on their own. When it's the time to make a concert or whatever, it's all good, but not more than that.
Yeah. You, I would imagine, have a slightly different perspective though, because you also have your own recording studio, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
In which you're sitting right now, unless you are a massive audiophile who just likes to have acoustic paneling in these rooms.
Yeah, I'm in the studio right now.
Yeah.
So I have like a different perspective, and of course it's good because we don't have to pay for the recordings.
Yeah.
Well, I have to pay with my time, but it's not the same. And also I'm in contact with many bands. Although most of the bands here in Spain don't come to my studio. I work mostly with bands from other countries. So but it's also good because I can listen to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So in some way I have that constant feedback and ideas in my work. So I say, this sounds good. Maybe I would take note of it and do something similar.
Yeah.
It sounds shitty, but it's the truth. It's how art works.
Do you really want to use that riff? I think if we just put that to the side for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's true,
Yeah.
It's true. I listen to a lot of stuff and I say, okay, this sounds good. This sounds fresh. This sounds that. And probably I use it like consciously or subconsciously in my own stuff.
I do think, though, particularly the newer music that you guys have put out, the music that's going to be on the new record, I do feel like it has a very unique and distinct flavor. And this is part of why I was interested in talking to you about the Spanish scene, because, as you say, it's interesting hearing all of these different countries all seem to kind of have, they might all play black metal, but they all have a very, very unique take on the genre. And I kind of wonder whether, is this new record of yours, is this one of the albums that could kind of define this new scene? And that's not necessarily a question to you, but it's more just something I was thinking when I was hearing the album. Do you see a lot of bands kind of going in that kind of darker, I guess, discordant, and almost sort of abstract direction that you guys have gone with this record?
Well, I see many bands doing it, of course. I don't think we have like invented anything.
Yeah.
I don't think we are like a very original band. Although I do think we sound like we're recognizable, but I don't know. I'm not sure if we are being like a reference for other Spanish bands or whatever. I don't think we are. Maybe time will tell, but at the moment, I think that we're finding our own sound and we're our own personality. But I'm not gonna say that we are very original or whatever. I'm very conscious that we are part of like a generation of bands, and many people say like, oh, this is modern black metal. Well, okay, maybe we are. Doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of that,
Yeah.
I know who we are. I listen. We have been listening black metal for a lot of years. We know all the classic stuff. I love all the classic bands. I listen to a lot of classic stuff, raw stuff, very underground stuff. But for one reason or another, we have taken that path. Like sounds more like a modern black metal, like people say,
The amazing thing for me about black metal, though, and I sometimes I get a bit of heat from people who say that I'm too negative about death metal or too negative about other genres. But the one thing that for me is incredible about black metal is the extent to which I feel like it's the only subgenre in metal that continues to raise the bar. Like there's, as you say, some of the classics, the old guard, like Mayhem in particular, have put out absolutely incredible records. But then at the same time, black metal is one of the only genres where year after year there's just one after the other incredible new band that comes out, and maybe they're not new; they're on their second record or their third record, but it feels like the generation keeps on taking the genre up a notch. Whereas something like death metal, there are exceptions, but I do feel that's a genre that got a little stuck in its ways. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I know that many death metal fans will dislike this, but I think it's true. But I think it has to do with the music itself, because it's like black metal allows you to make all kinds of experiments and mixtures, and let's take this and take that and see what happens when you put it together. It can sound angry, sad, melancholic. Like it's more open to all kinds of feelings or moods or whatever. So it's like there's always some way to improve or to do something new.
Yeah.
It's what I feel. And I feel that like death metal or doom metal or whatever, it's like I love to listen to all kind of extreme metal, but they feel more like trapped in some kind of sound and some kind of direction, and you can transmit all that variety of feelings.
Yeah.
I know if you understand what I say.
I 100% agree with you. I feel like there's a very set formula for a lot of bands, and they don't really ever do something outside of that. If you think about Mayhem, Mayhem did a completely different record on Ordo ad Chaos to what they had done on Grand Declaration of War. And then on Esoteric Warfare, they went in a totally different direction, and then on Demon, they went in a totally different direction. If you look at the old guard in death metal, and you take a band like Cannibal Corpse, I like Cannibal Corpse's music, but can anybody really articulate the difference for me between Torture, Red Before Black, Kill, and say the Wretched Spawn?
Yeah, that's what I say. Like they are trapped in that sound,
Yeah,
and they can really go everywhere else because it's like they are supposed to sound, and they have been doing that for all their fucking life. If like imagine Cannibal Corpse releasing something like atmospheric or something, like people will say, what the fuck is this?
A song with keyboards.
Yeah, it's impossible to do already.
Yeah.
So I think that in black metal you can do almost whatever you want.
Yeah.
So that allows more people to come in and do their own vision of what black metal is, and that keep the genre like fresh, and every year you have something new or not. But yeah, I agree with that.
It's
And yeah, in particular, like you mentioned Mayhem.
Yeah.
I think I have mixed feelings about Mayhem because they have put like some regular albums, but and many people say that they are like sold out and whatever, which in part is true. Like they are very focused on selling their own image and their own whatever, but well, it's their job. But at the same time, I think that they have done like completely different things in each album. And after The Mysteries Dom Satanas, they went in a direction that nobody expected.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't there at that time, but I have heard like people went crazy when they, in a bad way, when they released Grand Declaration of War.
Yeah.
Maybe like nobody expected that, and they sold out, but at the same time they have done whatever they want in every album. So it's good for them.
Yeah.
I think they had the balls to do that.
Yeah. I was just about to say, every single interview I've ever seen with Necro Butcher or with Attila, those guys genuinely don't give a fuck. I mean, they don't write music because they want people to like them. I think they write music, they write whatever is interesting to them at the time.
Exactly.
Ergo Ordo Archeo, which a lot of people didn't like, I love. I think it's one of my favorite Mayhem albums. Because I think it's so dark and so different, and actually, when I listen to a lot of what's coming out now, I think a lot of newer black metal owes a debt to records like that, which is maybe not being spoken of as much because a lot of Mayhem fans didn't like that album. But my personal view, I can hear the influence on a lot of bands, from discordant to really sort of dark, I guess sort of droning black metal like that record was.
Yes. The same happened to me with Chimera.
Yeah.
I think it's a great album, and I don't know if many people like it at that time, but I think it's really great and influential album. Like many more experimental bands were inspired by that album, and I'm not sure it was recognized at that time.
No, it wasn't. I think
so. Yeah, I respect those guys because they have done whatever they wanted in every album, so it's good.
Yeah. Just took a swig of my beer there because it's the end of a fucking long day. Speaking of which, I know you guys took about 3 years to put together this new record, and obviously you have an extraordinary amount of things going on outside of work. But just talk me through the writing process. I get it must have been very refreshing to have your bandmates in Madrid with you actually working on the record as opposed to living all over the world.
Yes, that was a big difference this time because I was used to like make the most of the songs in my room or here in the studio in front of the computer, but that is like sometimes you don't find the inspiration and you're fucking alone and you don't know if that riff sucks or is good. So it's like I need some feedback and a real fucking drummer playing over my riff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this time it was much better to make the new album. It was harder and it took more time because it's not easy to find the time to go to the rehearsal room. Everybody has their own life. But yeah, we did it and it was great. Even the Alex, our singer, made the lyrics while we were doing the songs in the rehearsal room, which was like really nice. So he showed us like I have written this during all this, jam session, if you want to call it, and we could see what he was writing at the time, and that inspired us to make riffs like sound good with those lyrics.
Yeah.
So yeah, the composition method was different this time, and it was easier and more. It was better than before.
The composition process, or the process of putting together these songs, did it feel like it was happening faster when you were able to have the band together in the rehearsal room, or is it just a different dynamic rather than things just coming together more quickly? You understand what I mean? When you got people in Mexico and wherever else people are living.
Yeah, well, as I said, it was like faster when we were in the rehearsal room. We made like, maybe in a couple of rehearsals, we have already 5 minutes of new music done. Of course, you have to like rearrange it, and you made many changes after that, but we could have like the structure of a song in a couple of rehearsals. But it was more difficult, like to organize the rehearsals and like going physically to rehearse. But once we were there, it was easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, when I'm composing, in front of the computer, it's slower to make the riffs and make the shit. I have to make the program drums and all that, which I hate. But
yeah.
But you can do it every time,
Yeah.
And during the night or whatever. So yeah, both ways have good things and bad things.
And was the album already recorded by the time the lockdowns and stuff happened, or did that disrupt the work on the album?
Not really. Like the album was finished the last year during December. I already sent the album to the Bemur Morty, so it was finished like in December. But yeah, this whole shit maybe interrupted the promotion of the album.
Yeah.
Maybe it was supposed to come out in March, maybe. So we delayed it a bit. So because also the first single, which you didn't know, came out during the first weeks of the quarantine and all this. So many people didn't know about it because most people were focused on other things.
Avoiding the police when they go and visit their friends.
Thinking about what we're going to do without their jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
So many people didn't know about the first single.
Yeah, that is actually true, because how I found out that you guys had put out new music was Marco from Stellar Master Elite mentioned it to me, and I can't remember what day it was on, but I know the release of the single coincided with the release of a couple of records that I was really was really excited about. And that's probably why I originally didn't pay as much attention to it. And then when I think the second single came out, I was like, "Fuck me, this is good." Which obviously is then when I decided I needed to get in touch with you. But the concept of this record is really. I saw some notes on this in another interview, and it seems like something that's pretty kind of sprawling and complex. Can you talk a bit more about some of the ideas and some of the narrative behind the record?
Well, I'm not the best one to do it because it was all done by the singer, Alice. So yeah, I have answered some questions related to it in some interviews. After that, Alex read some of my answers and said, "Well, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to say with the lyrics, but well, I think that he wanted to do something like inspired by brutalist architecture, because at that time he was like making a lot of pictures from that kind of architecture. So I guess that inspired him to do this whole concept of, like big cities and big monuments eating the humans that created it. I know I'm simplifying it a lot because I didn't do the lyrics and because my English is very limited, but I think that the whole concept talks about that. Like, we as humans create all these fucking civilizations and big cities and all that, but we're enslaved by it, and we live for it to maintain all these things going on, and we're all frustrated and we're all angry, but we're part of it. So
and eventually civilization eats itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's not really, I don't think, to be honest, it's like not really original concept. What's original is how we our version of it, but it's something like many people talk nowadays. We all feel trapped in this life, in this modern life. I have lived in big cities all my life, and I feel like I like to live in a city, but I hate it every day. Many people say the same thing. So yeah, basically that's the inspiration of the whole concept.
Yeah. I would say, by the way, I've got a perfect way for you to answer that question from now on, so that you don't have any tension between yourself and your singer. Anytime someone asks you what is the new record about, just take a sip of your drink and just go, Satan.
Yeah, I should do that.
But it's interesting what you say about life in a big city, and I feel one of the things, and in fact, I not just feel it, you can see on a lot of opinion polls and stuff that you read. One of the side effects of the coronavirus is that a lot of people now want to move out of big cities. The statistic that I read not too long ago was that 45% of people living in the Bay Area, so living in Silicon Valley, would move to either outside or to another state for up to a 20% pay cut. Something like 78% of people working professional jobs in New York are thinking of leaving the city. And in Seattle, it's something like 41%. So it'll be interesting to see. I have a suspicion that that inner cities and the kind of these big metropolitan hubs that we've gotten used to in our generation, I would say that in a decade from now, there's a very good chance that they're going to look extremely different to what they do now.
Yeah, maybe they will. I don't know. I think the main problem, like the really big problem we have is overpopulation.
Yeah.
And like maybe 2 million people move out from Madrid in the next 2 years, but 4 million people are born here, so it's like impossible to break that tendency.
Yeah.
So I'm not really hopeful about that.
Until the aliens come and they thin the numbers out.
Man, I really hope that happens. It will be very, very interesting to see.
It's like, wow, there's no more traffic jams.
Yeah, man. I have had those thoughts about moving out, and I haven't read statistics, but of course I thought like I'm not the only one thinking about this shit.
No.
Everybody wants to go out because this is like really oppressing.
Yeah.
Know that politics, and you can't use your car. You can, I don't know. It's really frustrating to me.
Yeah. How far out would you move though? Would you go to the suburbs, or would you do like a full Varg living in the fucking forest in the middle of nowhere in Spain, or not Spain, sorry, in France? To what extreme would you go when it comes to moving away from the city?
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not sure about that. Maybe not full bark, but like not living in a big city. But it's a hard decision because, as we said, we are slave for all that shit, like computers, internet, cars, going to buy some shit at 2 a.m. in the morning. So it's really hard. It's also hard to get used to that other living. And I'm really realistic about that.
Well, I'm going to be doing that at the end of October. My girlfriend and I are moving to an equestrian farm. So she keeps her horses on an estate. We're moving there. We're going to live amongst the horses. So, but there's fuck all to see for miles, which is perfect. Like if you're there in the summer, and it's a clear night, you see the stars, and it's just very, very different. The air is fresh. It's about 20, 30 minutes drive to the closest town, which I'm fine with. And I double checked you can get rural internet that's up to 300 meg per second, so I'm fine with that. So as long as I have an internet connection and I can take all my hi-fi shit with me, then I'm fine. I'm done with the city though.
Yeah, well, that if your jobs allows you to do that, it's good. I guess.
No, that's one of the big perks of my job. I manage a team globally, so I work from home most of the time anyway. When they started the isolation, I was like, it's no different to my life. I work from home. I'm not really somebody who spends a lot of time in bars and stuff like that. I just obviously couldn't go to the gym, and I couldn't go to restaurants. But outside of that, it didn't change my life massively.
Yeah, but this was something different, at least here in Spain or in Madrid. Like, of course, I'm not going out every day, but this was different. Like, you can't go out there.
Yeah.
You have to stay in your fucking home. If you take your car, we will stop you and we will ask you, where are you coming from? Where are you going?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? It didn't feel good to me, to be honest.
It felt like I do think that the UK didn't have it as bad as places like Spain and Italy. But I mean, at least when I say that, I mean in terms of the how heavily the law was enforced or the lockdown was enforced. But it did feel a bit like house arrest. It's kind of like, we've got armed guards outside, so don't fuck around, kind of thing.
Yeah, man, I got like mixed feelings about it. Like, I understand we had to do it, but at the same time, I'm not gonna deny that some days I just thought, man, just let die who has to die, and let me do my own shit. I know that's not really like
strong survive policy.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that's not the right thing to say or to do, but sometimes I run out of patience and say, man, we need our fucking freedom, and I want to go out like to see the fucking sky.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to manage this whole thing. I have been ranting a lot of shit about the politicians here, but at the same time I understand this is like really hard to manage, and I understand that some things went wrong.
Yeah, I agree. I do feel like in hindsight, there's a lot of people that have died, but I feel like in with a benefit of hindsight, I think there was some very hysterical analysis being done right at the start of this, and it feels to me like the government reacted to that probably in panic more than anything. And I understand why they would have panicked, because if I were in government, most likely I would have done the same thing. But the fact of the matter is, the Asian flu of 1957 to 1958 that claimed nearly 2 million lives. The Hong Kong flu of 1968 to 1969 that took over 1 million people, and the economy didn't shut down either time. I feel like the after effects of this economic lockdown, could end up being responsible for killing or ruining people's lives, if not killing more people than the actual virus itself.
I completely agree, but you have to be careful to who you say that, because
oh yes,
I have some bad arguments with people for saying that.
Yeah.
But the truth is that it doesn't matter if 10 million people die in the big picture. But of course you can say that to someone that which has a relative who died or or whatever, of course it's a really mean thing to say.
Yeah.
But the reality is that it can be worse, as you said, all the economical issues that will come in the next years or months.
Yeah.
That the fucking virus itself.
The thing also, though, on the counter argument to this, and when I heard this, it did make me pause for thought. But Tentacle from Omega Infinity, he said something very interesting, and he said there is no glory in prevention. So, say for example, maybe we're not thinking about it in the sense that perhaps we prevented 100 million deaths, or perhaps we prevented 500 million deaths, or if you want to be really crazy, the extinction of the human race. But the lockdown managed to curb it long enough that we've kind of slowed it down. So I don't know. I think there's arguments to every story. There's a number of arguments. There's a number of ways that you can look at it. I do hope that in a year from now that this is in the rear view, because I'd like to start seeing some bands play again. And you guys, you're not a heavy touring band, but I would assume you guys are going to be playing live in support of this record when you can.
I hope so. Like there are different reasons we are not a touring band. Well, one of them being that we're still a small band.
Yeah.
Another is that, as I said earlier, we all lived in different countries during some time, so it was really difficult. Another reason is that I personally don't like that much to play live. I like it, but it's a lot of hassle, a lot of rehearsals and time and money and a lot of shit invested on it. And it's a rush once you are in the stage playing, but everything before and after is horrible.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you are Metallica, I guess it's great, but
yeah,
if you
everything
have to
is done
carry
for
your
you.
own shit.
I was just about to say, if someone's carrying your gear for you, and you're sleeping in a beautiful plush hotel, and cruising around in your own private jet, it's slightly different to being in a van.
Yeah, man. But if you have to drive 10 hours and then 10 hours back, or take a plane with all your shit and all those controls that there are in the airports. It's like a nightmare to me.
Yeah. No, I
Also,
agree with you. And now they're saying that it's going to take 4 hours to actually check onto a flight because of all the extra checks and all of the extra sanitization and all the sort of shit that they're going to have to be doing.
yeah, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I don't know how the big bands will do it, but all the medium bands will do it because it will be a nightmare.
Yeah. A question for you with regards to the studio. So, how did you get involved in that? You know, and am I correct in assuming that it's your studio? It's your own business?
Yeah, it's my own. It's really small studio, to be honest. I'm sharing it with a friend right now, like sharing the expenses and all that. But yeah, it's my studio. I got into this like 15 years ago or 12 years ago because I liked it. When I had my first band, we went to record a demo that once was called Eterna Penumbra. It was also a black metal band. We went to record our first demo in a so-called studio, and it was like really shitty. And I was like observing all the things that that guy was doing, and I liked it. And I say, man, I think I can do that better than this guy. So the next demo, we did it ourselves already. And after that, I went to college. It's not really a full college career here in Spain. It's only 2 years, but yeah, it's like a technical degree.
Yeah.
So I did that around 2008, and well, I worked in other people's studios for a few years, and then in 2016, I think it was, I made this studio.
And you worked with some fucking cool bands though, because I saw that recently you had done some work on the new Selbst album.
Yes. Well, I have done most of the Selbst work until now. So yeah, I've been working with some great bands, not big bands, but like underground bands with a lot of quality. So I'm proud of it. You know,
you have done. I'll tell you about Selbst. I mean, you've done an absolutely phenomenal job with particularly that last Selbst full length. So I've spoken about this before on the show, but I am massively into high end hi-fi, and a friend of mine even more so, and he spends an absolutely insane amount of money buying speakers and amplifiers and shit like that. And we always use Of Solitary Ramblings as one of our test tracks when we go and listen to or when we audition new equipment, because the separation that you have between the instruments on that track, and you know the way that you, especially in the beginning, you know the guitar is so clear, and the way the cymbals hit initially is so clear. It's an unbelievably good recording. So well done, man. I'm glad you're the man behind the behind that sound.
Thank you. But you're talking about the track of the last Selbst album.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's that song has been played to the horror of many old Dire Straits fans in hi-fi shops on hi-fi setups that cost well in excess of £100,000. So and it sounds spectacular when you hear it on that. So you don't always get like obviously audiophile quality recordings in metal, especially not black metal. But that album is just something extraordinary.
Yeah, man. Thank you. That album was done here almost completely, even though the Selbst main, the mastermind, haven't been in Spain in his whole life.
Yeah.
But it is because at that time the drummer was the drummer of Aversio Humanitatis. Like he did what do you call it? session recordings. So we did record the drums here, and he recorded all guitars like in clean, so I reamped them here. So yeah, like also the bass, so drums, bass, and guitars were really done here. He sent me the vocals. So yeah, most of that album was done by me here.
Yeah.
But this new album, he worked with a drummer from Chile, where he's based now. So I didn't get the chance to record the drums here. But anyways, I mixed the album, and I think it sounds great.
Yeah, well, that first track that's come out now sounds absolutely fantastic. And again, like I said, man, Debemer Morty is just such a fucking badass label at the moment. I mean, you know, they got you guys, Bluthaus Nord, Selbst. They got one of my other favorite bands, a band I think is very, very underrated, Outer, out of Poland.
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah, you guys are in very good company over there.
Yeah, man, we're really happy about it. I think that Debemer Morty is doing a good job, like not only working with the bigger and classic bands he has in his roster, you say, yeah, like his, but also like giving the opportunity to smaller bands that like us, and it's a smart decision for him, because that way he will always keep showing new stuff to the people and selling more records at the end, because people will always, you know, keep Debemer Morty in mind and saying like this label always keeps surprising us.
Yeah. No, for sure. Dude, I'm gonna let you go. Firstly, though, before I let you go, your English is fine. I don't know why you were nervous about it, but you sounded great, and I had a hell of a good time talking to you on this time around. Hopefully, we'll get to do it again at some point in the future.
Well, thank you, man.
Awesome. Take care of yourself, brother. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the record when it comes out. And, when this bullshit lifts, then, if I ever find myself in Madrid, or if you find yourself anywhere near London, we need to meet up and have a couple of beers.
Okay, thank you, man.
In person this time.
I hope so.
All right, brother.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
the excuse for tearing it on. Please to me, not take the pain I cry. The voice in me.
Thank you once again to Simon from Aversio Humanitatis for coming on the show, for being such a gracious guest. And like I said, absolutely make sure that you check out the new Aversio Humanitatis record. It's called Behold the Silent Dwellers, in case you missed that before. The song that I played is a track called The Presence in the Mist, and it is out now on Debimu Morty Productions. I think they've put out CDs. They have got, obviously got it up on Bandcamp. So check it out if you don't know it, and tell them that Into the Necrosphere sent you. Right, let's talk now about Deicide's first record, which, as I said at the top of the show, at the time that I'm recording this today, is 30 years old, which is fucking insane, because I think there's people listening to this show that aren't even 30 years old yet. And I've spoken about this album many times to many guests. If you listen to the interview that I did with Lee from Unblessed Divine, we spoke about it, and it's come up in conversation many times. But I wanted to talk about the record on its third its third decade of existence, and probably go in, share with you guys how I discovered it and what it meant in my life, because it really was, if I had to rate some of the most influential records that I've ever come, I sort of had the pleasure of experiencing in my life. That first Deicide record is in the top 5, if not in the top 3. So to give you a bit of context around it, I'll probably backtrack to before I discovered the album, so you guys can kind of know where I'm coming from with some of the stuff I'm going to share. I'm going a little deeper than normal today, which feels a bit weird when you're doing this on a podcast. But if you start to get bored, skip ahead by 5 minutes or so, and then you'll hear me rant and rave about the news. But anyway, I grew up in a very, very kind of, I wouldn't say closeted environment, but certainly the city that I grew up in was like Utah, as I've described it in the past, where everybody, if the people in Utah weren't such fucking sinners, I had to go to church every Sunday morning and every Sunday evening. As a result, I've read the Bible cover to cover multiple times because I would get so bored during the services. That was the only thing that I could get away with doing. The school that I went to was awash with a bunch of fucking religious nutcases. And the way in which they applied their religion was by enforcing it with a belt. We still got corporal punishment when I was a lad, and if you stepped out of line or you questioned anything to do with the Bible, you were probably going to get the cane. And then some of the boys in school it wouldn't go beyond them to take a fist to your face if you said anything they didn't agree with. Now, I'd been listening, this, if we're talking timeline now, this was around 1994. I'd been listening to metal for, quite a while already. I discovered metal when I was 9 years old. I heard AC/DC for the first time, and, the rest is history. But I'd been into Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, Sepultura, all that sort of shit. And in the midst of all of this, a group of absolute fuckfaces from school who, have since all gone on to become security guards and fucking bums, decided that not only was I a devil worshipper and a practicing Satanist, which, I was neither, but I also had the power to cast spells and, put curses and hexes on people. So, in order to combat this unbelievable evil, one of the things that they took it upon themselves to do was to try and fuck me up at every possible opportunity. So for about, I'd say probably 2 to 2.5 years, I could basically not go anywhere without, without at least worrying that these guys would turn up, and invariably if, I went to a party, they would pitch up and it would, turn into a fucking melee. If I, it was even so crazy that I remember one Saturday afternoon, I was in a shopping mall parking lot with some friends of mine. And these guys pitched up, and again I got pushed around, slapped, blah blah. Another example is one evening, or one Saturday evening, I was coming back from a friend of mine, and this was probably about 11, 12 at night. And somehow these fucking morons had figured out where I lived. This was before the days of the internet, so I don't know what sort of sleuthing they had done to do so. But anyway, they found out where I lived. They waited. About 5 of them were waiting for me in front of my house. And me, man alone, against these 5 guys who'd been held back for several years in school. So they weren't the brightest, and they were also probably not supposed to be in school anymore because they were, I think, all about 18 or 19 years old. I was 14 at the time. They, smacked me around, spat in my face, pushed me to the ground, kicked me. It was a real fucking clusterfuck. So in the midst of all of this, I was very, I was dealing with all of that, and probably dealing with it about as well as most kids my age would do. Music was a real kind of saving grace for me during all of that, but no music had the impact on me that Deicide had, and in the middle of all of this, I also had the typical, and I wouldn't say South African power struggle because I think it happens across, households everywhere. But, given that my parents were quite religious, there was a bit of a power struggle going on in our house between me and my dad, or battle of wills, I should say, around what I could and couldn't listen to. I would be asked to, or I would be instructed to burn, flags and fucking posters and tapes and whatnot, and then just as soon as I'd burn them, I would get new ones. I'd replenish the stocks. So one day he had gotten hold of a documentary that had I think aired on the BBC in like 1991 called Dancing with the Devil, and Dancing with the Devil had started off with a guy talking about how music had moved on from the pelvic thrusts of Elvis Presley to the extreme, shocking, satanic black metal like Venom, Slayer, King Diamond, and Deicide. And then the picture faded out, and you saw this fucking lunatic standing on stage with his clearly homemade armor, holding his bass really, really high, like no one I had seen up until that point. yelling at the audience, oblivious to evil. And that was kind of my introduction to Deicide. I'd known about the band, but, at that point, I still wasn't really listening to much death metal because, even though I was listening to stuff like Pantera and Slayer, I was kind of still in that phase of, I think, musical development where a lot of death metal sounded to me just like a bunch of fucking racket. And Deicide really opened my eyes to something quite different. They had this clip of them on stage, and then they had Glenn come on. And this was still, the old days of Glenn. So he's sitting there being interrogated. And again, I've told this story before, but he's sitting there and he's being asked by the interviewer, do you believe in demonic possession? He's like, of course. Are you possessed? Of course. And there was something I found extremely intriguing about the character that he was portraying, because I think a part of me knew that he was portraying a character, but equally a part of me really kind of reveled in the realness of what I was seeing. Like, there was something more convincing about Glenn as a guy who really was sticking two fingers up at society than there was about the guys, from example, Pantera. Months before that, I'd seen Pantera do, I'd seen the Vulgar videos, that home video set, and I was so fucking disappointed by seeing them act like, in my opinion, particularly at the time, just complete fucking scumbags, puking up, drunk, just. I think how my mindset was at the time, anything that reminded me of anything about normal society, I disliked intensely, which is, I think, why, over time, I got so deeply into black metal. But there was something about the way that Glenn was talking that, like I said, as much as I knew, and I wasn't a Satanist, I wasn't sitting there going, yeah, I wish I could be possessed. There was just something about the character that I just immediately loved. And I straight after the interview, they play the breakdown in Sacrificial Suicide. So you hear, the damn to hell and my life, which I thought was genius as well. And I watched that clip so many fucking times. I think the videotape that my dad had gotten this on was stretched and fucked up right before the Deicide bit starts. Anyway, about 2 months or so after this, I get a very random call from somebody, and the guy says to me, and this was actually on my 15th birthday, says to me, listen, I've heard from somebody that you might be interested in buying a copy of the first Deicide album. I happen to have a second copy that somebody gave me as a gift, but I already have a copy, so you can buy mine. And so I was like, yeah, fuck yes, I'd love it. So come over and I'll give you the cash, and then we can do a deal. And as I said, it was on my birthday. The guy came over, I gave him the money, and I said, listen, you wanna hang out for a bit? And that is, side note, how I started a friendship with a guy who, until today, I see as one of my absolute best friends. And that was about 25 years ago. Anyways, so that's kind of how I discovered Deicide. And when I finally got that first record, I mean, I listened to that album absolutely to fucking death. And to this day, I still listen to it at least once or twice a week. I think it is, the greatest death metal record of all time. I think there's something absolutely beautiful about its simplicity, because it's not nearly as technical as a lot of the stuff that came out at the time. It's not as musically accomplished as something like Altars of Madness or Scream Bloody Gore, but there's a ferocity and there's an anger to that album that I don't think has ever been matched in the death metal scene, and I don't think there ever will. Glenn's vocals are, I mean, it's not even a growl; it's just fucking yelling in just pure hatred and anger. The production is raw, but it has a real kind of muscle to it as well. The way the Hoffman brothers are playing their solos, it's fucking unhinged craziness. And then Steve's drumming is spectacular as well. Again, all of it is just, it's not about being technically brilliant. It's not about being, the world's greatest musician. It's just a complete and utter release. And so the reason I mention all of the bullying and all of the shit as a backdrop to this is because, I would say part of why that record is so special to me is that in the midst of all of that stuff, the album I turn to again and again to make me feel, not, I wouldn't say better, but to make me feel empowered during that time, was that first Deicide record. There was something about the anger and the fucking rebellion and the badassness about that record that for me was just supremely empowering. And I genuinely think that things in my life could have gone a very different way, probably a pretty dark way, the way that I was feeling at the time. And I do credit, various bits of music, but particularly that first Deicide record as being the thing that kind of held me steady. Which I know, if I had to talk to anybody that's outside of the metal scene about it, they would probably go, "What the fuck are you talking about? How did this satanic screaming racket, keep you on the straight and narrow in your life, during that time?" But I think anybody that listens to metal, I think knows what I'm talking about. So I wanted to share that story with you guys, so you kind of understand, my why that record is so special to me, and I thought it would be nice to talk about it on a, on a day like this, which is let's be frank, this should be a fucking public holiday. But yeah, after I probably spent a big chunk of my life with a massive chip on my shoulder about what had happened when I was at school, and I think what helped me get over that in my late 20s eventually was starting martial arts and lifting weights, which I think it goes without saying, if you have a kid or you yourself are going through any of this shit, that's the best medicine for it. But the thing that kept me steady while it was happening was Deicide. So that's kind of my little tribute to the first Deicide record. I don't need to talk to you about, the fucking production and this backstory to it or any of that shit. I'm just going to give them a tip of the hat, and I'm going to play one of my favorite tracks off the album. This is Mephistopheles. was Mephistopheles by Deicide off the first record simply entitled Deicide. And like I said, 30 years young today. Very frankly, if you have not yet listened to that album, you have no business listening to this podcast. Let's talk some news, and I'm going to go a somewhat different route today because I don't know what fucking server Metal Storm uses, but for some reason I can't get them to come up on my browser. But what I will do is I'll talk about a few things. One of the things I wanted to talk about actually is The Last of Us 2. Because I, for the life of me, cannot understand why there is so much hate for this game. As I said, I've played 15 hours. I am not somebody, as you guys well know, that supports wokeness in any way, shape, or form. But good God, have people been fucking acting like absolute little fucking dickheads about this. I understand there's a few things about the plot that they don't like, but I mean, the actual gameplay is fantastic. And not only that, I think that Naughty Dog were actually quite brave in some of the story decisions that they made. I mean, me personally, how many more fucking games could one possibly play where the main character or the character that you control is a grizzled military veteran or ex-spy or fucking CIA agent turned on by his own government. And then you read some of the responses to this, and it's extraordinary how personally people have taken this. Bolgwang on Metacritic says, "My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined." Fangenigwir, or whatever the fuck his name is, "It breaks my heart to write this, but I really did not expect such a poor story after all these years of waiting." Michael X. Angelo, "The most overrated game this generation. The critic reviews are either fake or the reviews are too boneless to say how generic the gameplay is." Generic, my fucking nuts. There's nothing generic about the game. It plays like the fucking first game. If you liked the first game, there's no reason why you shouldn't like the new game. Hello there, 23. "This franchise is all about the story. Without the story, the game means nothing." Joel Miller, "Honestly, this game is not for fans of the relationship between Joel and Ellie. This game totally destroys that, and it changes it into something unrecognizable for The Last of Us." It's a good thing I don't run a video games website, because good God, man, a lot of gamers need to have their heads shaved, and they need to be sent to the military. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on that, because I personally think if you haven't played it yet, give it a try. If you like the first one, I think you'll like the second one. I don't know a single person, I don't have a single friend, I should say, that was a fan of the first that thinks the second is shit. I think the second is awesome. I think the actual experience of playing it, graphics, everything is top notch. I think they made some brave decisions with the story. It might not be for everybody, but not even that should take away from your enjoyment of it. One of the things that I saw people crying about, there's a wank stain on YouTube called The Quartering, and one of the things that he made a big fuss about was the fact that you have to kill dogs in the game. So, well, firstly, it's not the first time that you have to do it. Secondly, you have no problem mowing people down in their fucking droves, but God forbid you kill a bunch of pixels shaped as a dog. I mean, I'm not advocating animal cruelty by any stretch of the imagination. I love me some animals. But why you would get all bent out of shape about that, I have no fucking idea. Anyway, let's move on to some news, and we'll start off with Decibel. Although that being said, I've been digging through a bunch of things here, and I've not really picked up much news that's worth mentioning. I'm sure there'll be a few things I can rant about. As a matter of fact, actually, whilst we're on it, there was one thing that I'd spotted on Blabbermouth that I wanted to talk about. So, former Black Veil Brides bassist Ashley Purdy responds to allegations of sexual misconduct. Anybody shocked by this? if you guys are fans of the comedian Crystalia, you will know that you're probably having to be a little bit quieter about that now than you used to be. I was so bummed about the news that came out that had all these Snapchat exchanges that were really dicey between him and various female fans. Some of them were younger than 18. I mean, I think calling him a pedo is maybe a step too far. He was talking to girls that were 17, 16 years old, and from my understanding, and I might be wrong about this, when one girl mentioned that she was 16, he immediately stopped talking to her. But either way, I mean, what he was doing was some seriously predatory shit. But if people think that that's like an outlier, I like Jamie Jasta, but if you pay attention to his podcasts, how many dudes has he spoken to where he'll preface something by saying, I probably shouldn't say this on the podcast, blah blah blah. When they're talking about stuff they've done on the road, and that's people like Randy Blythe, Cazares. I have a suspicion that before this year is up, I think a very significant chunk of the people, and I would hope not in black and death metal, because I know we're talking on this news about a lot of shit that really none of us like, but I just like laughing about. But I think a lot of people in in movies, a lot of people on the comedy circuit, in bands especially. I think a lot of those folks are going to have dramatically trimmed down career prospects. I do want to assure all of you that the good news is that the only 4 women I have in my DMs are Katie Irizarry, who was on the show. One woman who told me that she really liked the interview that I did with Lee back when he was in Malevolent Creation. A woman who asked me whether or not the podcast is available on Podbean. And my girlfriend. And part of the reason it's very unlikely that number is going to increase is not because I'm a misogynist. It's because I'm fucking terrified that my girlfriend murders me in my sleep if I do anything wrong. So, like I said, the good news is I shouldn't be cancelled, at least not for this sort of fucking bullshit anytime soon. I'm sure there's plenty that people may hate my guts over, but yeah, it won't be for any of these shenanigans. Here's one question though. If they're going to go after this dickhead from the Black Veil Birds, or they're going to go after Crystalia, how come the guys from Motley Crue get a pass, and how come Al Jorgensen gets a pass? If you've read either of their books, Al Jorgensen talks about, if memory serves me correctly, having sex with a woman and then leaving her handcuffed to a radiator and just leaving. There was a story in the Dirt, the Motley Crue autobiography, where Nikki Sixx had supposedly, he was supposedly midway through the act of coitus with a lady when he disappeared, called Tommy in, and had him continue the job. And when he was asked about it, he was like, "Oh, I can't remember that. It must have been, I was so high, I just can't remember it at all." Which is just, it's so fucking pathetic. Because the thing about this cancel culture, which does warm the cockles of my heart, is not only are assholes being brought to justice, and I mean I'm not a fan of cancel culture. Don't get me wrong, but I do laugh at the fact that not only are a lot of assholes being brought to justice or taken to task for the stuff that they've done, a lot of these finger wagging fucks that are quick to point out all of our flaws and tell us how we should live our lives while they don't do anything remotely the same and lecture us about fucking politics and the climate and everything under the sun. It's a lot of these assholes that are being caught up by this. And I have to say, I'm fucking glad for it. Former Sepultura guitarist Jairo Tormenta Guedes launches old school death metal band The Troops of Doom. I've not heard that, but I will check it out because I think that might possibly be fairly interesting. I reviewed the last Sepultura album earlier in the year, and again, I really liked it. I like it a lot more than I like anything that Max has done with Soulfly or with the Cavalera Conspiracy. It's just not, I would just take. I just think what they do is just so much more interesting. They constantly try and experiment, innovate within kind of the milieu of the Sepultura sound. And there's an intelligence to what Sepultura does that I personally think is absent from anything on Soulfly and on El Era Conspiracy. I mean, there's only so many more times that I can hear Max go, "Fuck all your politics, fuck all your bullshit." It's like, come on, man. Think of a variation on the theme. Speaking about fuck all your politics, Motley Crue's Tommy Lee defends his right to speak out on political issues. I can give you a spoiler alert on this article. Motley Crue's Tommy Lee posts a statement. "How dare my fans say that I can't speak out of politics? I watch CNN as much as 5 minutes a night, and then I call up Blabbermouth to let them know what I think about fucking Trump and those goddamn conservatives. Fuck them." I give people a lot of shit about talking about politics on this podcast, so I'm going to clarify. In case anyone, I don't think anybody would say, "Well, if I shouldn't listen to Tommy Lee, who should I listen to?" But just so people know who I think you should be, looking to for guidance during these troubled times. Look up Thomas Sowell, Mohammed Al-Arian, George Friedman. There's a bunch of guys. Anyone that works for Stratfor, anyone that works for Geopolitical Futures. There's a dude named Peter. I'm trying to think what his surname is. He's done this recent kind of Chaos in the World not book tour, but like I'll have a think about what the name is. It'll come to me in a second. But if you want to genuinely get a proper view of what's going on in the world, those dudes fucking know what they're talking about, and they're relatively apolitical. Everything is fact based. And I think if more people listen to them, especially someone like Thomas Sowell, if more people spend some time listening to Thomas Sowell, there'd be less of this drivel and less people fucking paying attention to fucking idiots like this. Exodus, ex-Slayer, ex-Machine Head members team up for cover of Dead Kennedy's Police Truck. I've really liked some of these quarantine covers. This Police Truck cover is pretty cool. Charlie Benante did one with Carla Harvey of Butcher Babies, who he's dating. The cover they did was of Teardrop by Massive Attack, and I thought that was fucking superb as well. I actually, Massive Attack is a band that I really like, and I think they did the song, a really great service. So I hope we're going to see more of this. And as I said, I thought this was fucking cool. David Ellefson on Megadeth's upcoming record. It's an intense record, or upcoming album, I should say. I'll believe it when I hear it. I thought Dystopia wasn't bad, but Megadeth for me is one of those bands that peaked at Rust in Peace, and there's just never been anything that they have done that's even come close since. Rust in Peace for me is a perfect record, 10 out of 10. And everything that they've done after that just doesn't do it for me. I also am not a fan. I think that was the only record for me where Dave Mustaine's vocals actually really worked. There was a video that came out when they did that Big Four tour a couple of years ago, and they had everybody on stage, and they had Joey Belladonna, James Hetfield, and David Mustaine share vocal duties, and I actually had to restart the video because I thought at first I thought something was wrong with my speaker when Dave started singing, and then I thought it was a joke. I was like, this someone's taking the piss. This is an edit. Someone has fucked around with how the voice sounds, because I cannot believe that a guy in such a high profile band could have such terrible vocals. It literally sounds like the dude is straining to take a shit when he's singing. It's like this really nasally, like, it just sounds sounds fucking awful. Lamb of God's Randy Blythe. I would never, ever, ever want to be president of the United States. Mate, you don't need to worry about that. That being said, I know I said I wasn't going to review the new Lamb of God, but it is a good album. And I take back what I said about Art Cruz, especially in the light of what we now know is the drivel that Chris Adler is attached his name to. Just again, man, the lyrics on that Firstborn EP that they just put out. I think the one lyric to the song I played last week, something about making you follow or making you fall prey to the misguided souls. It's, oh my God, as I said, it's literally like some fucking bookworm nerd, video game geek that's 8 years old, got a guitar for Christmas and recorded his own song. It's absolutely dreadful. Venomous concept featuring Napalm Death and Brutal Truth members, politics versus the erection. I'm looking forward to this. I've toyed in the past with the idea, maybe trying to get somebody like Barney to come on the show. And there's this website called I Side With, and basically the way what you do is you answer questions based around policy and your views on stuff like immigration, crime, education, transport, and stuff like that. And then in the end of the quiz, and it's about 25 minutes or so, it tallies up your answers, and it tallies up, you kind of give a weighting to the answers and stuff like that, and then it shows you who you are politically aligned to. I've toyed with the idea of having somebody like Barney come on and doing that, and then we can kind of talk backwards and forwards around what stuff we agree on, what stuff we don't see eye to eye on. But I have to say though, in the current climate, I actually think that's potentially pretty dangerous, which is a real shame, because I still contend that I really believe that people have a lot more in common than I think the media would lead us to believe. And I think a lot of this division and a lot of the stuff, it's spurred by three things: unhinged fucking nutcases on social media, mainstream media, and mainstream celebrity culture. And I think once you look past that and you go, let's ignore the personalities, in politics. Let's ignore the tribalism, and let's talk purely about what we think about or what our opinions are on specific things. I think most people would realize they've got a hell of a lot more in common than not. But like I said, maybe I'll do it sometime. I don't necessarily think the time for that is right now. I do, however, think the time is right for me to call it a day, or call it a show at the very least. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. Next week, Alex from Ruins of Beverast joins us. Like I said on last week's show, he is going to be dropping some fucking heavyweight news on this episode. So you do need to tune in for that. In the meantime, once again, thank you so much for your support. Please help me grow the show organically with the right people by spreading it to people that you think might, or sharing the content with people you might or you think might like it. And in the meantime, from me, from the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, I am wishing you a fond farewell. I am going to have to change that at some point, because I'm actually moving to the countryside in October. So this plush studio that you see behind me, if you're watching this on YouTube, will be here no more. I'll be out in the countryside, and I'll be away from most of society. So I'm going to have to change the catchphrase at the end of the show. But for now, have a fucking great week, everybody, and thanks for tuning in.